Hello and welcome to Tracy Mommy Reads. I am back today with another video. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Instead of a book review, I'm going to be doing a bookish this or that. Yes, talking about my preferences, one thing versus another. So without further ado, let's get started. First up, Colleen Hoover or Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I know it's maybe not cool or kosher to pit two authors against each other, but I feel like they are two really popular authors. Both write books that social media has elevated and really given a lot of attention to. But my preference, I have to go with Taylor Jenkins Reid over Colleen Hoover. And I don't know, I feel like with, I've read so many of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books that I've, reviewed here on the channel. And I've read several of Colleen Hoover's books. I think I only reviewed one on the channel. But I like Taylor Jenkins Reid, like the nostalgia piece of what she does and how there's always a resolution without dragging her characters through so much shit. Just my own personal thing. The relationships aren't nearly as toxic in the Taylor Jenkins Reid books. I mean, there's a lot of times like legit relationships that are kind of based on love and, and understanding and things like that. It's not so much for the drama. I just feel like her stories, I like the plots and the storylines a whole lot better. And that's just my opinion. Next, paperback or hardback. And I think I've talked about this before. I like them both. I mean, obviously,
Hardcover.
They're going to be a lot more sturdy. They're a lot prettier to look at in some cases. But they are hella expensive. So, in paperbacks, there's a lot to be said because they are a little bit more flexible with the spine and the cover being made out of paper. They can go in a bag or they can be easily bent, but they do kind of look like crap if you, keep doing that to them. So just really depends. If I'm able to get a good deal on a hardback or hardcover, hey, I'll buy it. But, typically I've been getting a lot of paperbacks here lately, if I'm not reading, on the Libby app. Okay, Bookstagram or Booktube? Ugh. I mean, obviously the first thing out of my mouth should be Booktube, right? Because you're here on Booktube watching this. But I don't know, I guess because I started off on Instagram and that's where my whole hashtag Tracy Mommy Reads, tag came from, engaging with so many, fellow book lovers and learning about so many different books. I guess it's just Bookstagram just has a special place in my heart. Granted, it can be toxic sometimes, as can any social media space, but I think it's just more near and dear to my heart. I'm still kind of newbie at this Booktube thing, and that's why I always try to keep my videos short, because the way my attention span is set up, sometimes it's hard for me to get into watching videos that are past the 15-minute mark, because I could be reading. Anyway, romantic or erotic stories. I prefer romance, maybe with a little erotic. But, it has to I just don't want the erotic for the sake of that. I want something that's kind of romantic and based on real life and things of that nature. I guess I'm just a romantic at heart. Fiction or nonfiction? I read both, but I always tend to gravitate towards fiction books more because I just like the escapism. I just love the escapism of, going into new worlds created by these authors, focusing on characters and how they're solving some real world problems that actually exist. Nonfiction, I think you have to be in the right headspace sometimes to read nonfiction books, depending on the book, because I know a lot of people have talked about, some memoirs that they've read and some political books and things like that it could be very triggering. And, you turn on the news every night and get stuff like that if that's what you're into. So I tend to gravitate more towards fiction books. The book or the movie? Come on, what kind of reader would I be if I didn't say the book? Books are always better because they have a lot more the author has the ability to give us a lot more detail. Whereas with movies, you know, there's like time limits, there's budgets, there's all kind of stuff, and they end up often cutting out sometimes the best parts of the book. So, you know, there's a few exceptions that I've talked about on previous videos, but all in all, books, hands down. New or used? Ugh. I mean, who wouldn't love a new book? But again, you know, the way that my budget is set up and the way I'm trying to be physically responsible, I have been, you know, picking up more used books when I am buying books. Like if they're not on sale, I have been doing a lot of thrift books, you know, from the thriftbooks.com site. And I've also been doing half price books if I go into a actual store. A lot of the books are very well cared for. So some of them, I mean, they look brand new. I mean, you could tell that maybe somebody's like flipped the pages, but nothing where it's like distracting or anything like that. I got 2 books off of thrift books that I saw in Barnes and Noble. And one of them, I was like, oh, I really want this book. And it's on my list to read for next year. But in Barnes & Noble, it was $24. I got it off Thrift Books for $6. And I don't know if that's a testament to maybe it wasn't all that great, but I'm still looking forward to reading it anyway. So yeah, used books. Let's see. Do I read every line or skim through the pages of the books? It depends. I have been guilty of being a skimmer, you know, not unlike a scammer, but it depends on where, like if I'm reading a book and I just can't get into it, or if I'm reading it and it's not going where I thought, you know, it's like a departure from what the blurb said, you know, sometimes I get a little curious or confused. So I may start flipping through the pages like, okay, where is this going? Because I don't want to waste my time reading a book that no longer interests me once I've, you know, started it. So I just kind of like skim just to see if it's going to get back on track or if it's going to pick up. And then a lot of times I'll just go back to where I was and try to be patient, even though I did go to page 70 and now I know something that's going to happen. Still doesn't take away from it. But for the most part, you know, I tend to, you know, wait it out and let the books, you know, run their courses. Because, you know, as an author, I know that sometimes that build up, you know, while some authors are a little bit superfluous, most of the time that information that you're wanting to, you know, bypass, it ends up being like some critical stuff once you kind of get to the end or to the, you know, midway point. So I have skimmed, but for the most part, I read every line. Let's see, series or standalones. If you have been watching this channel for any amount of time, you already know, one and done, that's my motto. I don't care for series. I'm all about standalones. Wrap that shit up. I got other books to read. Happy endings or unclear endings. You know, I've read a couple of books and it's so funny. I don't know if my friend is watching, but I recommended a couple of books to a friend and one of them, like, it didn't really have a clear ending. And what I mean by that is, like, there was this book that I read where at the end of the book, this person that you thought had died, you know, this woman was in the bathroom. When she comes out, this thing was on the bed. And only the person that would have died would have been able to leave that there. And that's kind of how the book ended, right? So you don't know, okay, is that a setup for a sequel or is that just how the author's going to leave it? Me personally, I prefer happy endings. I like it all nice and neat and tied up with a bow. Let me know how everybody's doing, where everybody's at, so that I can peacefully move on to the next book. So yeah, I prefer happy endings. And they don't have to be happy in the mushy way, but just a satisfying ending where I can put that book down knowing I got the whole story, right? And I'm not waiting on something else to happen. Let's see, dog ear or bookmark? Come on, bookmarks. I mean, and I just don't understand. If people want to bookmark their books, it's their books. They paid their money for it, unless they're renting them from the library, which that's trash behavior. But if you want to dog ear your books, so be it. I mean, I know sometimes like maybe you get called away or there's an emergency, or you got to put the book down, but there's just so many other things you could use. as a placeholder, a receipt, a paper clip, a pen, a toothpick. I mean, you can use anything to just slip in the pages of that book until you can get back to it. You know, and I have a whole cup of bookmarks, and it's whenever I start like a physical book, because I've been doing a lot of books from Libby on my Kindle or whatever. The first thing I do is get a bookmark, and I just put it in the front of the book, because I know at some point, it's very rare that I get to sit down and read a book from cover to cover in one sitting. So at some point, I'm going to have to pause and stop. So I already have my bookmark ready to go. And sometimes with the hardback books, the hardcover books, if they have a dust jacket, I'll use the dust jacket and slip it in between the pages. But I don't dog your books. Plot-driven books or character-driven books. Being someone who, is an author, I feel like my strongest skill is writing dialogue, right? And that is like what I kind of look at when I'm reading books. I like more character-driven books, what these people are saying and why they are behaving the way that they are behaving. And like when I first started the channel, I used to do the whole, dream casting, because I get visuals of the characters and how they're moving throughout the story. And I feel like I like letting the characters tell me the story, So even though I've read a lot of books like this, and, I can get into either one, plot or character. Let me take a step back. I'm more character driven, and I like to let the characters tell the story, but there has to be a good story, right? So it can't just be some basic stories with a bunch of, dialogue. But I don't like reading books where it's just all like text without character interaction or character commentary or characters being involved, if that makes sense. Library or bookstore? This is kind of hard because I love going into bookstores. Obviously the smell and the just being surrounded by all these books and browsing the titles and seeing the spines and all of that. It is just such a visceral experience. But again, some of the bookstores, their pricing is it can be pretty expensive. I do my best to try to support, especially independent bookstores, price be damned. But when I go to a library, I kind of get the same feeling, except at a library, most libraries, it's going to be like older books. There's like a lot of different stuff going on. A lot of people are in there studying. There may be story time for kids. So libraries are a little bit more, they're busier. They're more community focused. But that's where I get my books from that I read here lately. I either rent them digitally or I go into the library. I just feel like with the bookstore experience, though, to do a final contrast, it's this, it's quiet, like libraries should be, but it's quiet, it's more modern, it's like a bougie library, right? But you gotta pay for the books. Both obviously are gonna be a book lover's dream, but for me, at the end of the day, I have to say I'm a looky-loo more in the bookstore, whereas in the library, I actually go to get the books. Binge reader or slow reader? If the story grabs me from the first line, first page, first paragraph, or first chapter, I'm binging. A day or two, I have it done. I'm not really a slow reader unless it's hard for me to absorb what's happening, or I'm having to, look up stuff. It took me a while to read the Stacey Abrams book, Where Justice Sleeps. Because my God, the terms and the situations that she used, it was okay, my head is exploding. Not that I don't possess the intellect to have gotten the story, but it was just such a departure from books that I had been reading that were just so quick and fast paced. So it was one of those books that I had to give pause to. The Time Salvager was like that as well, because of all of the, space and time, things that the author had woven into the story. So some of that stuff I had to look up, and I was making notes. And then Michelle Obama's first book, her memoir, you know, I just was savoring that because I didn't want it to come to an end. Those are the only type of books that I can remember in recent memory where it took me a while to finish them. And by a while, I mean like maybe a week, because usually a day or two, I can, you know, have a book knocked out. Like I said, if it's fast paced, it's interesting, and it's keeping my interest. So yeah, I'm definitely a binge reader. So yeah, that's all I have today for this or that. I would love to know your thoughts on some of the questions that I asked today. Pick one and let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. I sincerely appreciate you guys so much. Thank you to everyone that has subscribed to my channel. You guys rock. And everyone who takes the time to like videos and engage with them. I really, really, you know, appreciate it. That's why I'm continuing to do these videos, regardless to how many views I get. I enjoy talking about the books, and there are people out there who apparently enjoy listening to me talk about them. So I'm here for the long haul. And for those of you who have not subscribed, now is your chance. Go ahead and click that subscribe button, as well as that notification bell, so you'll be notified when I post a new video every Thursday. Thanks again so much for watching. You guys have a great weekend. Bye.